What's my greatest joy? Watching a family fall apart and the man walk out willingly just to follow me. I didn't steal her husband. I simply made it easy for him to choose betrayal. My name is Sloane Carter. I don't believe in love. Only in the quiet moment a man hesitates before answering his wife. Not for love, not because I asked, but because I made it feel like his own idea. That's the thing about men like him. They don't need a push. They just need someone to remind them they're still capable of wanting. I don't beg, I don't promise. I don't even seduce, not in the way people think. I leave a door half open, and they step through it, thinking they found the exit themselves. My name is Sloane Carter. I'm 32, and I don't believe in love. Not in the way people write about it or tattoo it on their ribs. What I believe in is silence. Hesitation. The tight little pause a man makes before answering his wife's question. That pause, that's where I live. That's my invitation. Over the years, I've watched married men unravel like loose threads. Just one word, one glance, one moment of being seen. Not adored, not worshipped, seen. Daniel cried after the first time we kissed. Said it had been 7 years since anyone touched him like they meant it. Malcolm held my hand under a table at a gala and told me he felt more alive in 30 minutes with me than in 3 years at home. But Julian was a different kind of slow burn. I saw him first at a tech conference. Nothing sexy, just screens, stiff suits, and too many cheap lanyards. He stood beside his wife, the kind of woman who reads success manuals and quotes Brené Brown at brunch. She was perfect, perfectly placed, perfectly patient, perfectly forgettable. He wasn't staring at her. He wasn't even really with her. He was drifting beside her, like a ghost at his own funeral. And I knew. I didn't speak to him, didn't even smile. I just watched him ignore his own wife and filed away the moment for later. Julian West, CEO, married, 1 daughter. Routine bleeding into ritual, every day clocked and accounted for. And I was the question he hadn't been asked in years. He didn't remember seeing me that first night at the conference. But that's fine. I remembered everything. He wore a navy suit that cost just under too much, and a silver wedding band that had clearly been polished that morning. His shoulders leaned slightly forward, like he carried something heavier than ambition. Julian West, CEO, husband, father. A man slowly drowning in the routine he built himself. Soon to be mine, momentarily, of course. I watched him long enough to learn his rhythm. Men like Julian always have a rhythm. They walk through their lives like they're following a script someone else wrote years ago, too tired to rewrite it. The secret to getting their attention isn't in being loud, it's in being quiet enough to make them curious. I waited 1 week. Not because I'm patient, but because anticipation is half the game. His wife, Lena, worked in the same corporate building my firm occasionally collaborated with. That gave me just enough reason to be there, just enough to make it believable. That morning, I arrived early, ordered black coffee I wouldn't drink, and sat near the lobby elevator. I knew he came down at 9:46. I'd been watching. When the silver doors opened, I rose from my seat, and we crossed paths exactly where I needed us to. Our shoulders touched. My phone slipped. He bent first. "Sorry," I said softly. Just enough softness to contrast the silk of my blouse and the firm tone of my posture. I smiled, short, unreadable, a question in the shape of a woman. "Thanks." He looked at me, really looked. Not in the hungry way men do when they want something. It was the look of a man unsure why he noticed. That's always the look I wait for. The most dangerous kind. "Be more careful," he said, handing me the phone. "Depends who's watching," I replied, brushing past him with a half smile. I didn't look back. I never do. Because if he turned to follow me with his eyes, it meant he was already wondering. And if he didn't, that meant he'd remember later, and the question would haunt him more than the answer ever could. He thought he was just helping a stranger. What he didn't know was that I had already memorized his routine, calculated his angle of vision, and chosen that exact spot where the lighting made my skin look warm and my silhouette sharper. I didn't need him to be in love. I needed him to be unsettled, just enough to lean toward the edge. And from there, falling is easy. I didn't expect him to remember me from that morning at the conference. Men like Julian don't hold on to moments. They drift through them, too weighed down by obligation to notice what doesn't scream for attention. But I wasn't looking to be remembered. I was setting a tone, letting him know that somewhere in the haze of daily life, something different had passed through, and now I was going to let that difference grow. A week later, I returned to the building where his wife worked. Same time, same lobby, different approach. This wasn't about contact anymore. No more phone drops or accidental brushes. That had served its purpose. Now it was about presence, familiarity, that quiet danger that comes from repetition wrapped in coincidence. We crossed paths again, once at the elevator, once near the cafe, once at the security desk, each time I was doing something simple. Reading, waiting, laughing softly on the phone. I never greeted him first. I let him notice me. But I did one thing different. I changed my perfume. Not to something bold or new. No, I went backward. A boutique scent. A soft amber rose layered with a touch of sandalwood. I'd found it thanks to a photo his wife posted on their anniversary 3 years ago. The caption was innocent. He always loved this one on me. The brand was tagged. Small, local, easy to find if you knew what you were looking for. Most people wouldn't. But I wasn't most people. The first time I wore it was on a Thursday. I didn't look at him when he walked by. But I caught the shift. He slowed down, turned ever so slightly. Not to look at me, but because something pulled him. Scent is memory's weapon. It bypasses logic. It doesn't ask permission. He didn't say anything, just nodded, slightly confused, as if something was tugging at him from behind a curtain he couldn't name. The second time he spoke. "We keep bumping into each other," he said, almost smiling. I smiled too, half amusement, half question. Maybe we're just orbiting the same routine. Maybe. We stood in line for coffee. I leaned a little closer, just enough for the scent to settle. "You should try the Colombian blend," I said softly. "It's bold, but not bitter." He ordered the same as usual, but he hesitated for just a beat, and that was all I needed. That night, I opened my leather notebook again. Julian West now had 2 pages. I wrote, "Scent confirmed, recognition building, curiosity lit, ready for trigger." It wasn't seduction, not yet. It was strategy, it was symmetry, and soon it would be surrender. There's a window of time, just after midnight, where logic sleeps and loneliness stretches its legs. For Julian, that hour was 1:17 a.m. I didn't guess. I knew. His LinkedIn timestamp showed he often scrolled late. His company Slack had random activity at absurd hours. He liked articles at times no one with a full heart should be awake. Married men always show their cracks when they think no one's looking. I just made sure I was watching. I waited days after our last accidental encounter. Long enough for the scent to fade, but not the feeling. Long enough for curiosity to become ache. Then, exactly at 1:17 a.m., I sent the message. You ever get that 3 a.m. ache where you're surrounded but still feel like no one's really next to you? No emoji, no punctuation, just space. Just enough truth to sound like his own thought, texted back to him from the dark. He didn't reply right away. I didn't want him to. I wanted him to stare, reread, second guess, then remember that feeling. The one he hadn't told anyone about in years. 20 minutes passed. Then his message came. "Who is this?" I let it breathe. Then I replied, "Someone who sees the parts you've been hiding." And that was it. No name, no seduction, just a well-placed mirror. He didn't answer again. but he didn't block me either. That's how it always begins. Not with a reply, but with permission. That morning, I wrote a new line under Julian's name in my notebook. Night contact established. Emotional breach, passive, memory trigger, engaged. I didn't smile. This wasn't a game I played for pleasure anymore. This was alignment. This was timing. This was control so elegant, it felt like inevitability. He started showing up more. Not enough to make it obvious, but just enough to notice. A few mornings in the lobby, a few quiet afternoons in the cafe. Always unspoken, always just there. Julian greeted me with a little more ease every time. A nod, a comment about the weather. Once when we both reached for the same stir stick, his fingers brushed mine. And this time, he didn't pull away. Neither did I. He said, "Sorry," but his voice didn't match the word. The next time I saw his hand before I saw his face. The ring was gone. A faint tan line still circled the base of his finger. I glanced at it, then at him. "You forgot your ring today," I said casually. He paused, then looked at me, not startled, just quiet. His reply was simple. "No, I didn't forget." He left it there. So did I. We sat across from each other in the corner booth by the window. It was late afternoon, soft light spilled across the table, and between our drinks and silences, something new had settled in, the kind of stillness that only happens when two people stop pretending they're strangers. He talked about Ellie, his daughter, how she refused to eat carrots unless they were shaped like stars, how she thought all dinosaurs lived in volcanoes. His voice softened when he spoke of her, and something in his face relaxed, like he could finally breathe. I smiled gently. "Do you ever feel like she's the only one in the room who still believes you're a hero?" He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he wouldn't answer. "Yeah, every day," he said quietly. There was a pause between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just full. Like the space between two people who knew they'd crossed into something that couldn't be undone. Later, when I handed him a napkin, our hands touched again. This time he didn't flinch. He looked directly at me, steady, quiet, different. His eyes weren't searching anymore. They'd already found something. That night, I didn't write anything in the notebook. I stood in my dark apartment, staring at my own reflection. Still Sloane. Still composed. But there was something in my chest I didn't want to name. Not weakness, not attachment, just awareness. The next morning, I opened the notebook and wrote in red ink, "He's starting to fall. Don't go with him." Then I closed the book and didn't open it again for 2 days. Every accidental touch, every lingering glance. He kept stepping closer, until the moment came when he stood right on the edge between logic and desire. I kept playing the part of the hunted, soft in his presence, pliable under his gaze, as if I belonged to the will of the man approaching me. I let him believe it was his choice, that he had the power to decide how far we would go. And when it ripened just enough, he erased the line. That was the night Julian West betrayed his family. We had dinner near the East River, quiet, controlled. He didn't reach for my hand. I didn't lean in. The tension sat between us like a third presence. When he walked me to my door, I didn't break it. I didn't chase it either. He walked me to the door. I unlocked it, stepped inside without a word, and left the door just slightly ajar. I didn't turn around. I didn't invite him in. I just let the space between us breathe, unguarded, unresolved. And then, like it meant nothing, I started to hum. A soft, old tune. I wandered barefoot toward the kitchen, pretending not to notice the door, pretending not to care if he stayed outside or turned away. My voice floated in the air like warmth from another room. For a few seconds, he didn't move. Then I heard it. The soft fall of shoes on wood, the quiet click of the door closing behind him. That was the moment Julian West didn't just walk into my apartment. He walked out of his marriage. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't weakness. It was a choice, a deliberate betrayal, not only of his wife, but of the man he used to be. I didn't look up. I just kept humming, like none of it mattered. Later, when he kissed me, he hesitated. Just for a second, like he needed one last permission. I didn't give it. I just leaned back against the counter and let silence be the answer. His hands were careful, almost reverent. But mine weren't. I unbuttoned his shirt like I was opening a gift I had already unwrapped in my mind a dozen times. He made love like a man afraid of breaking something. I let him because I knew there was nothing in me that could break. Not anymore. When he came apart, it wasn't passion, it was surrender. And I took it, quietly, cleanly, like claiming a prize I never doubted I'd win. He came back 3 nights later. Then again, no pattern, no commitment. But each time he stayed longer. And once, he brought Ellie. He texted first, "I've got her this weekend." I replied, "Then don't come." He showed up anyway, holding her hand. She wore a unicorn shirt and a smudge of strawberry yogurt across her chin. She looked at me with big, curious eyes. "Daddy said you have the best cookies," she declared. "He's right," I said, kneeling. "You want to help me make some?" She nodded and ran straight past me into the kitchen like she'd done it before. Julian followed, but slower. He stood by the hallway, watching me tie my hair back, watching his daughter climb onto the stool beside me. He didn't say anything, not until later, when Ellie had fallen asleep on the couch with chocolate on her nose. He reached out, not to pull me into bed, but just to take my hand. I let him. The next morning, I woke to a message on my phone. Ellie asked if you'd be at her birthday. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Of course I will." Because now I had both of them. After that night, I saw them more. Not just Julian, Ellie too. It began with excuses. She forgot her lunch, he needed a walk, I was just nearby. It didn't take long before the excuses became habits. She started expecting me. She liked my cookies. She liked my voice. She liked that I looked at her when she spoke and didn't tap away on a phone while nodding absent-mindedly. Ellie had started calling me her cookie queen. She liked sitting in my lap while I painted her nails with clear polish. Told me secrets she said even her mom didn't know. And once asked if I could come to her school play. Julian said Lena had missed the last one. Something about a conference. "She's always busy," Ellie told me once, while braiding my hair with her tiny fingers. "She comes home tired. She hugs with one arm and types with the other." Julian had frozen when he heard it. I hadn't. I just smiled. That kind of gap couldn't be taught. It had to be earned by neglect. So when Ellie looked at me, she didn't see an intruder. She saw comfort, familiarity, attention. And when she pulled me into her birthday like I belonged there, no one could really stop her. Not without saying things they weren't ready to hear. Julian didn't formally invite me to the party. He simply said, "It's at 2. Saturday. Here's the address." No plea, no permission, just inevitability. I arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. Not early, not late, just enough to be seen. The dress fit perfectly. Pale blue satin, soft neckline, fitted waist. It was the exact one Lena wore in their anniversary photo from 2 years ago. I remembered the caption. "My favorite night." Lena noticed the dress instantly. She didn't flinch, not outwardly, but I saw the way her fingers tensed around the stem of her wine glass, the brief pause in her breath. I greeted her with a smile and a compliment. She replied with one of her own. We were 2 women exchanging pleasantries while standing on a landmine. The party was full of color and sugar, and the kind of chaos only 6-year-olds can generate. I helped arrange the juice boxes. I handed out tiaras. I stood quietly beside Julian while the magician fumbled with balloons. We didn't touch. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. The distance between us was already thinning. When the cake came out, the lights dimmed slightly. Lena reached for Ellie, but the girl broke free and grabbed my hand. "Come on," she giggled. "You stand with us." She dragged me to the center without hesitation. Julian was already there. He looked at me, unreadable. He didn't move. He didn't stop her. Ellie took both our hands, mine and his, and pulled us in beside her. Lena stood behind the cake, still holding the knife, her face trained into a perfect social smile. And just like that, I was in the family photo. We sang, we clapped, we blew out candles. Together. Then Ellie looked up at me with frosting on her nose and said, "You help me cut it, okay? Like last time." She didn't look at her mother. She didn't wait for permission. She only reached for me. Lena handed me the knife with fingers slightly colder than before. Our eyes met. Hers tried to hold. Mine didn't flinch. The rest of the party blurred. Piñata, laughter, shrieking children. I slipped away. He followed. Of course he did. We found each other in the corridor behind the kitchen. Dim, narrow, a place no one would go unless they weren't supposed to. We stood still for a moment. Then he stepped closer. His hand found my waist. My back met the wall. The kiss was rushed, clumsy, heated, not loving, something sharper, urgent, desperate. His breath caught when I bit his bottom lip lightly. His fingers pressed tighter when I didn't pull away. "What are we doing?" he whispered. "Losing," I subsided, and liking it. His forehead rested against mine. "You shouldn't be here." I smiled, but I am. That night I didn't take a photo. I didn't write in my notebook. I didn't have to. She handed me the knife. Her daughter pulled me into the frame, and her husband kissed me like I was the only thing still real in his life. It happened in the most ordinary way. We were leaving the bookstore, Julian, Ellie, and I. She had picked out a stack of picture books, and I had paid because Julian had forgotten his wallet. Again. The air smelled like rain and new paper. We crossed the street, and she tugged on my hand to skip the cracks on the sidewalk. She was laughing. I was smiling. Julian was silent. And then she said it, loud, clear, without a blink. "Mom, look!" She pointed at a window full of stuffed animals. Then she turned back to me, completely unaware that she had just dropped a bomb between us. Julian froze. I didn't. I kept walking. I didn't even correct her. He caught up a few steps later. His face was pale, but not shocked, just rattled, disarmed, as if something deep inside had been rearranged without warning. "She didn't mean," he started. "Didn't she?" I asked, calm. He didn't answer. She skipped ahead of us, clutching her new book to her chest. Happy, innocent, unaware that somewhere behind her, the fault line had finally cracked wide open. Lena found out 2 days later. Not from us, from a teacher. Ellie had drawn a picture of her family in art class. It was me, Julian, Ellie, our dog that we didn't have, and a woman in the corner with red X's over her face, Lena's hair, Lena's heels, Lena's name. The school called her in. I heard she sat in silence for a long time before asking one question. "Who is this woman?" Julian told me about it later. I didn't ask what he said. I didn't care. Because at that point, I had already won. Not by seduction, not by scandal, but by something far simpler, familiarity. I was where I wasn't supposed to be, and yet everything around us started to adjust as if I belonged there. No one asked questions when I held Ellie's backpack in the morning. No one blinked when I picked her up from ballet. One of the other mothers asked me what school district we were in. Assuming. Always assuming. Lena tried to push back once. She showed up at the studio unannounced and demanded to take Ellie home early. Ellie refused, wrapped both arms around my waist and said, But she's my mommy now. That was the moment. Not the first night in my apartment. Not the first kiss in the hallway. That sentence. Lena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, blinking hard, then turned and walked out. Later that night, Julian texted me. She wants a separation. I didn't reply right away. I just looked at the screen for a long time, letting the silence stretch. Then I typed, "Of course she does." Nothing is more terrifying than a woman who decides to retaliate with logic after being betrayed. Cold, methodical, and never messy. Lena had always been that type. And I had always known she wouldn't break loud. She'd break precise. Julian came in without knocking. His coat was half off, his tie loosened like he couldn't breathe through it. I was folding laundry on the edge of the bed. Something delicate in my hands, probably silk. I looked up and smiled, like nothing in the world had changed. Like I wasn't already bracing for a storm. He started pacing immediately. She showed them. The board, full room, CFO, marketing, legal, the whole fucking leadership. His voice was strained and uneven, the kind men use when they're trying to sound composed but are 3 seconds from yelling. I tilted my head slightly. Showed them what? He ran a hand through his hair, then dropped into the armchair across from me. Footage, security camera, from my building, from that night. He didn't have to say which night. I remembered the taste of urgency, the way he pushed me into the wall like something possessed. She must have paid someone for it, or hacked it. I don't even care how she got it. She played it in the middle of my quarterly review, like it was part of the financials. My hands trembled just a little. I let one piece of clothing fall beside me. They saw it? He scoffed. Oh, they saw it. Clear as day, me kissing you, you pulling me in, both of us disappearing into my apartment like horny teenagers. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, like the weight of it all might crush his spine. I let my lips part slightly. Not in seduction, in something closer to disbelief. Julian, I didn't know she... I know, he cut me off. You wouldn't do something like that. I stayed quiet, let the moment settle around his guilt. She looked deranged, he muttered. Saying nothing, just standing there while everyone stared. She didn't even try to spin it, just let it play. I reached for the sheet I dropped and folded it slowly. My fingers moved carefully, as if needing something to focus on. Did they say anything, the board? They didn't need to. He sat back like the chair could catch him from falling. They just looked at her, like she'd lost it. Not me, not you, her. I didn't speak, not yet, because that was when I saw it. The shift, the exhaustion, the regret, but mostly the relief. He wasn't worried about the exposure. He was relieved someone else had pulled the trigger. She's filing for separation, he said. It came out soft, almost ashamed. I turned to face him, slow, deliberate, my eyes wide, unsure. Because of me? No, he said too quickly. Because of her. She's not the same. She hasn't been for a long time. I nodded, like I was processing it for the first time. Then I said what I knew he needed to hear. I never wanted to come between you two. His eyes searched mine like he was begging me not to mean it. I held the gaze for just long enough, then looked down at the silk in my lap, folded once, twice. She just made it easier, I said, barely above a whisper. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled me into his chest. I didn't hug him back, not immediately, but I did sigh, quietly, softly, like a woman who had just survived something much bigger than herself. And he held me tighter for it. The divorce was finalized on a Friday. Julian forwarded me the confirmation email like it was something we had earned, like the quiet meant freedom. He came over that night with tired eyes and a hollow kind of hope. We had dinner. He spoke gently, like every word was a step towards something we could build. He talked about apartments, paint colors, where Ellie might go to school. I let him talk. I let him dream. And I let him believe for a moment that we were still moving in the same direction. But somewhere between clearing plates and pouring wine, his voice slowed. He watched me too carefully. He asked if I was happy, and I smiled with the kind of softness that doesn't reach the eyes. Then he reached for my hand and said, "We can finally be real now." There was so much need in that sentence. Not love, not certainty, just desperation dressed as hope. I looked at him and said nothing at first. Then I asked, "What do you think this has been, Julian?" He faltered. "Us," he said, "becoming something real, after everything, after her." The way he said her, as if Lena had been an obstacle, not a person. I pulled my hand back. His fingers chased mine for half a second before falling to the table like they didn't belong there. "You weren't something I was becoming, Julian," I said. "You were something I was passing through." He stared at me like I'd spoken a language he never learned. "I gave up everything for you," he whispered. "My family, my life." His voice broke. "You said you wanted me." "I wanted the pursuit," I answered. "And you gave it to me. Beautifully." He stood up, pacing now, running both hands through his hair, shaking his head like it would change the room. "You don't mean this. You can't. This isn't how this ends." He looked at me like a man watching the train leave the station, still holding his ticket. "You told me I was what you needed." I stood. I walked to the door and opened it. The wind from outside touched my skin like a new page. I turned to him calmly. "You were, for a while." He didn't move. "So that's it? You're walking away?" His voice cracked around the edges, raw and unfamiliar. "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm just finished." He took one step toward me, then stopped. Like part of him still believed I'd change my mind if he stayed still long enough. I didn't. I stepped out first and left the door open behind me, not for him to follow, but so he'd hear how quiet the house was when I was gone. I didn't steal her husband. I didn't break their family. I simply made it easy for him to choose betrayal. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.